And when I first started, I would get a couple of things. People would tell me, "Oh, it's a gimmick. You're just leaning. It's a crutch for you to lean on." And I was like, "Well, for starters, I couldn't use crutches because of my disability. So thanks for bringing that up." And secondly, yeah, everyone would always say this, like, it's not like you can't just joke about your disability. Like it's too gimmicky. And I'd be like, MFers, it's my life.
Hello and welcome to the What's So Funny About podcast, brought to you by the Liberation Comedy Project, liberationcomedy.org. I'm your host, Pedro Silva, and on the podcast, we love to say that we talk to funny people about serious subjects, and today we are going to talk to Ryan Niemiller, aka Cripple Threat. He will get into that a little bit more later, but Ryan was third place on America's Got Talent most recently, and we're going to have a good one for you. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
How are you? What if I was like, what do you mean, AKA Cripple Threat? Who calls me that? Who calls me? Is that something you...
I don't know. I made that.
That's very bold of you right off the top. Just to
I know.
Assume we're that close. All right.
I'm sorry for making assumptions. Yeah, I know. So look, man, obviously you're a funny guy. You probably told the story 1,000 times, but how did you get into comedy?
I will be 100% honest. I got into comedy because I'm not good at anything else. Nice. And I don't say that in like a diminishing way. Sometimes people get really like, no, I bet you're really smart. You could. Yeah, I know I technically could have done a billion things, but none of them made me even remotely happy. So the Cliff Notes version of how I got into comedy. When I went to college, I always knew I wanted to be a performer, but I'll be honest, I thought my path was going to be professional wrestling.
Nice.
That's actually where the Cripple Threat name came from. That was the name, the persona I had come up with for wrestling. Nice. I've always loved wrestling since I was a kid. When I was in high school, this will be getting way in the weeds, but I went to a wrestling show in 1999. It was a WWF at the time, Monday Night Raw, and it was a pretty famous episode because it was the debut of Chris Jericho, and I happened to be in the building for that and kind of feeling the 20,000 people, the energy of that moment. I was like, oh, I want to feel that. I want to do that thing. So at the time, I thought I was going to be a wrestler. I trained to be a wrestler for maybe 2-3 months in my early 20s. It turns out it's really hard. And I am not what you would call a natural athlete by any means. My dreams were bigger than my physical capabilities. It wasn't an arm thing, actually. It wasn't my arm disability. It was just my back couldn't take it. It's just so much. But at the time, I was also doing theater. That's what I got my degree in, because I was like, oh, that's going to help me be a good performer for pro wrestling. And when the wrestling didn't work out, I was like, I actually kind of like this theater stuff. And then I always loved stand-up, and it kind of, theater was fun, but I didn't like necessarily, this sounds selfish, but being a part of that collaborative, I kind of am a bit of an attention whore,
Nice.
And
the best kind.
Oh yeah, 100%. I had fun doing it, but at the end of the day, I was like, I want to tell my story. Shakespeare's had his story told 1 billion times. I want to tell the Ryan Niemiller story. So after I graduated, I graduated from Indiana State University. That was 2006. I packed up my car and drove to LA and started doing open mics, and here we are.
Nice. So you just went straight to open mics to, that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
I had no idea what I was doing. In hindsight, if anyone's listening to this and you want to start comedy, you don't have to go to LA or New York. If you want to, that's fine. It sounds dumb and naive now. I could have started in Indiana, but no one tells you that per se. I thought you had to go to one of the big cities, and that's when they train you. And then you go out in the world. And it's like, no, I could have been told my dick jokes in Indianapolis just as easily, so.
Yeah. So when I first tried comedy, I was like, I wanted to overcome, my family was very performative and I wasn't. and I wanted to get past that whatever block I had to speaking in public and stuff. So I tried stand-up comedy because I was trying to avoid becoming a pastor.
Okay.
And then I tried stand-up comedy and I sucked. So then I ended up becoming a pastor. And then after pastor for 10 years, then I resigned from being a pastor. And then I started getting into comedy again. And this time I'm funnier, but I have less reservations now.
Let me ask you, do you get heckled a lot as a pastor?
Oh yeah, it's more gentle. Like they'll talk to me afterwards. Like one sermon, afterwards the guy was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that was the best 2 sermons I ever heard in my life." And that was his way of telling me my sermon was like long.
You were a little chatty. You were a little yeah. You ran the church light.
Yeah. And the first time, this is what made me start trying to be more humorous. This one guy said to me after the service, "If you're going to be depressing me this much, at least you can tell me a couple of jokes." And then I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I started slipping a couple here and there into my sermons, and that kind of like got me started. Then people started telling me I was funny, and I was like, "Oh, what? I am." And then kind of went from there.
See, that makes it interesting. We all have different paths to get there because the last thing you would have seen me do is become, a pastor. My hometown, allegedly, I never found the actual documentation, but I would believe it. I grew up in a real small town called DeMott, Indiana, and allegedly we had the world record for a bit for most churches per square mile.
What?
We're a very small town with way too many churches for the amount of population. I'm not saying not too many churches in general. That's not how, I would consider myself an atheist, but I'm not militant about it. If you ain't hurting me, I'm not hurting you, and so we all need what we need to get through the day. But my kind of upbringing was very, getting preached at and getting yelled at just for having questions. It wasn't even I was being disrespectful, but just like, hey, this part is this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm like, well, then you're going to hell. And I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and get out of this town then. I'll just do that instead.
I see your church town and I'll raise you one. Okay. The area I grew up was called Churchland.
Okay,
so the town was literally like spelled church land. So there was literally like, I think it was more churches than people. And I was like a kind of like bullied kid. So I was like, church was like the place I like hid. So I kind of got into it. But so yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. And same thing with the questions, man. I got like told so many things because I asked questions like, "Yo, what's up with dinosaurs?"
Yeah, and that was always the thing about it. Like I wasn't trying to be funny or disrespectful. I was really, trying to come to grips with it. But like my brain on a lot of things works very literally. So I'd be like, "But wait, how could that happen?" And they'd be like, "Well, just quit being an ass and just like You're just like, all right, well, I guess if you can't be gentle with me, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. This isn't my my party then."
I know. I completely hear you. So like one of the reasons why I started leaning into comedy is I actually saw this article that said why Dave Chappelle is the pastor that the world needs. And I saw that in I don't remember what newspaper it was, but I was a pastor at the time and I was like, I must be doing something wrong. Right. I was like, and I kind of got curious about it though, in the sense that like, if you grow up poor or whatever the case may be, like laughter is sometimes the only thing you have. You like laughing at your situation. And I noticed that like a lot of people who grew up in better situations would be shocked at some of the stuff that I laughed at because it was just like how we made it through the day. And I started getting curious about like, what makes different things funny to different people and how could you like basically tell like a golden joke that like every person can laugh at no matter what part of the world they came from. And just trying to looking for the common humanity and like bringing everybody laughs. They might not laugh at the same thing, but we all laugh. So I started trying to figure out that tie. And that's kind of where the Liberation Comedy Project came out of. So I want to ask you, how do you see comedy serving efforts to bring people together by building social cohesion or anything like that? Given the state of the world, I feel like we got to do a lot more laughing.
I would agree with that on a surface standpoint. The issue I think where comes in with some of that is you hit on it during there, is that not everybody thinks the same stuff is funny.
Right.
So that's where it can still get problematic. You know, like the type of stand up that I do, it's very autobiographical. I have very strong political and social beliefs. If we want to have a conversation just one-on-one where we're talking about that stuff, I'll talk your ear off. That's not a problem. But when I'm on stage, I'm trying to do two things. I want people to have a good time, and I'm trying to make money. You know, and I know that's not the that's not the artsy, like, pure thing to do with the art of stand-up. But at the end of the day, you know, I love what I do, but you know, I have a wife, I have an 8-month-old son. That you know, telling jokes is what's helping put food on our table and a roof over our head. So you know, is telling my Trump or Biden joke worth that for me personally? No. But you know, at the end of the day, though, like, I could go up there and I could tell tons of jokes about how Trump's an idiot, and I might piss off half the people.
Right.
And I could go up there and tell jokes about how Biden's an idiot, and I might piss off half the people. Right. And both people are, you know, they're allowed to have that opinion. It's not my job to ever tell. You know, we're getting to a little bit different subject here, but like, I think cancel culture is fake in comedy. It's not a real thing. Criticism is not cancellation. A lot of comics lean into that now if they do their hot take or their offensive whatever, and if people don't universally like it, they claim they're being canceled. No, you just put out a terrible special, Dave. I'm sorry. You know, like, I think Chappelle is one of the greatest comedians that has ever lived. His last few specials have been terrible because he's just leaning into this nonsense that I personally think is stupid. I don't think he should never work again. Right. You know, like saying that you don't like something. You know, comics don't get canceled. Real people get canceled.
Right. I appreciate that perspective too.
Yeah. Like I could go on stage and tell a horribly racist joke, for instance, and everyone hates it, but I'll still get to work. Yeah. If you go to your job at the accountant's office and you go tell a horribly racist joke, you know, you're never working in accounting again. You know, that'll get around. Real people get canceled. I have a rough couple weeks where I deal with some fallout. So I do believe laughter is important. But I also think people need to understand. I'm not against criticism, and I'm not against people not liking like certain types of comedy. But unless people are actively being hurt by it, I think people, what they need to do to kind of get through those moments is just realize that not everybody's comedy is for you. Right. And that's okay. You know, like you can think I'm unfunny, and that's perfectly fine. Go watch somebody else. You don't have to tell me on my Instagram how much I suck, because I don't care. I don't care. My wife loves me. My son loves me. My mom loves me, and my dog loves me. That's all I need. Everyone else is bonus. I do not care if you don't think I'm funny. Go spend time. I don't have enough time in my day to actively hate stuff I don't like. I don't have enough time in my day to love the stuff I love, let alone hate stuff. So like, just go on with your day, man. I don't care.
Yeah, that's actually, like, from my perspective, I take that as like deeply philosophical. Just the saying, like, I don't even have time to love the stuff I love. Like, so why would I give time to, hate this other stuff? That was actually a pretty powerful statement. If I was still a pastor, I might have slipped that in there.
Well, there you go. So, feel free. If you ever get back on the pulpit, feel free.
Yeah. I learned this from an atheist named Cripple Threat.
And then don't explain anything else.
And just leave it there hanging there, like, okay. Yeah. But just something came up for me as I was listening to you. That, I mean, hopefully, like, everything is on the table and it will be received the way I intended. But like, you have like a directness and kind of like okay, this is what I'm about. This is where it's at, and you're just hitting it. You know what I mean? Which is awesome. And I wonder, like, I'll give a story anecdotally. So when I was a little kid, I moved into a neighborhood. All these kids were picking on me. Like I said, I was bullied or whatever. And I came home and I was crying. And my mom said, "How was school?" And I was like, the kids were picking on me. And then she was like, what'd they say? And I said, they said I was like, they said I was short. And my mom said, you are short. And then she was like, don't you ever come in my house again crying about somebody told you something that was true. And when she said that, it clicked something in my mind. And then I was just like, it really impacted, because I was in second grade, and it impacted the rest of my life. And just accepting what is, you know what I mean? And not being into resistance to what is. And I feel like there's a power that comes from that. And I feel like you resonated with that power. So do you think with you called it your arm disability, do you feel like that gave you a superpower in the sense that you already you ain't got time, you don't have time for some stuff, because some stuff is whatever, I've been through all that. I don't know the best way to articulate that question, but just you can just be sharper and clearer because you don't have to please anybody, sort of thing.
To an extent, for sure. It's one of those situations that I don't want to claim I'm bulletproof, because I don't think any human being is. I don't think that's how, at the end of the day, if you leave a terrible comment on my Instagram, probably not going to bother me long term, but I'm still a person. You don't like to hear negative stuff about yourself, but I do feel, having the disability, man, I have so many other things to worry about. And there's so many other things that make my life hard as is, that kind of stuff, it can roll off my back a whole lot easier. Which I think is what you were getting to. It's one of those things that I always try to be careful, because I do a lot of not necessarily motivational speaking, but I do events where I'm kind of brought in to speak to other people with disabilities and stuff like that. And I'll kind of give you the small version of it here. I am a big proponent of you don't have to be a superhero. I think that's unfair to ask of anybody. Now, me just being the nature of who I am and what I've got to do, I've been on, worldwide television multiple times. I have this platform where it feels like, oh man, that guy's not bothered by anything. That wasn't just a thing that I didn't wake up in second grade and was like, you know what, life's great and nothing gets to me. It was a long journey to get there, and something I still struggle with now. Here's kind of how I describe it. I'm a huge nerd. I'm a huge video game fan. I know, you could probably see a little bit of the controllers back there. I own 5,000 physical video games. I'm a menace. I love my stuff. I describe my disability. If this was like a video game create a character, this is not what I would have chosen. Having a disability sucks. I don't want anyone who has a disability to ever feel guilty because they have rough days sometimes. Because having a disability sucks. And things that I don't necessarily. Being a woman, I'm sure, sucks. Being black sucks. Things that I don't necessarily directly. And I think you're allowed to have certain days where you're like, damn, this is hard. I wish this wasn't the thing. But I always tell people, and I always have to tell myself this: you're allowed to be mad. You're not allowed to stay mad. So you're allowed to have a day where you're sad and depressed because it sucks that I have weird arms and I can't do this. I'm allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to have a lifetime of that, though. I refuse to let myself do that. And I think that's an important thing that I try to get out there, is that if you're bulletproof, be bulletproof. But you're also allowed to have a sad day, and you don't have to have a major disability or something that's quote unquote this big thing that can be discriminated against. Sometimes you just have a rough day at work. Have your rough day at work. Wallow in it for a day, but then kick ass tomorrow.
Exactly. Nah, man, I would say preach. That's because there's preach, preach, atheist, preach. But yeah, no, I hear you on that. Because when I asked you that question, part of me was like, oh, he sounds like, to some degree, you sound like me. And I was like, oh, so then I just said, oh, I wonder I knew where it came from in me. So I kind of was curious. Because one time I had a dude, he was like, I was walking home from school, and there are a good number of drug dealers and stuff in my neighborhood. And one guy came up to me and he was like, yo, man, let me hook you up real quick. And I was like, what's up? And he was just, look, man, nobody likes you. And like, he started giving me like, it was like the worst motivational speech ever. He was like, you need a haircut. Nobody likes you. Guys don't like you. Girls don't like you. You're poor. Your clothes are ugly. I was like, good Lord. He was just listing it off. And I was
like, okay, when's the butt come?
Yeah. So then he was trying to get me to sell drugs for him. And he was trying to tell me, but if he could, get me a haircut, buy me some nice clothes and blah, 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 he would hook me up. And so I was like, whoa, he listed all this stuff. And I said, yo, is that true? And he was like, yeah. And I said, nobody likes me. And he's like, yep. And then I said, well, if I agree with you, it's going to be a unanimous decision. And so I'm just going to not agree with you. And then he got mad at me and said, see, that's why I hate you. You think you're perfect. And then I said, so what, man? I think you're perfect too. And then he said, I'm not perfect. And then he started tearing himself down. He was like, I'm a drug dealer. I steal. I'll take food. And I was like, what? What just happened right now? It was the craziest thing ever. But I realized like there's so many of us, like we come into this world and we get, like, no matter what our situation is, we get this script of people telling us who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be, what we're capable of. And a lot of us go and take it and we just run with it. And then some of us say, F that. And we live into our lives and do what we can with what we have and make the most of it. And
I mean, it's hard to fight against that, man. Like even when I started comedy, there's not a lot of comedians that are, considered successful with a disability.
Right.
With a noticeable disability. I don't want to be, dismissive. That disability is a wide spectrum, but like I don't have a disability that I can pretend I don't have.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot of templates for people to do it. And when I first started, I would get a couple of things. People would tell me, "Oh, it's a gimmick. You're just leaning. It's a crutch for you to lean on." And I was like, "Well, for starters, I couldn't use crutches because of my disability. So thanks for bringing that up." And secondly, yeah, everyone would always say this, like, it's not like you can't just joke about your disability. Like it's too gimmicky. And I'd be like, MFers, it's my life.
Exactly.
This isn't a gimmick I made. This isn't prosthetics. It's not makeup that I do. It's literally my existence. Everyone is going to talk about their life to some degree. Your life peppers who you are as a performer, for sure. I get mad when people tell women comics they shouldn't talk about women things. It's like bitch, they're women. That's what they're gonna talk about. Like, oh man, that black guy just talks about being black because he's black. That's his life.
Exactly.
That's what informs his life and his stories. So like, man, it's you gotta be yourself, and that was a hard thing for me to fight against because people who make the decisions and pay the bills would often be like, well, we don't know if our crowds are going to like someone like you. Because my comedy, even when I did AGT, that was the very clean version of what I do.
Right.
But my disability, I don't do the inspiration porn version.
Right.
When you have a disability, if you're unfamiliar with inspiration porn, that is generally people with disabilities are expected to not rock the boat. You're supposed to be very positive and chipper and have I can overcome anything. You're basically supposed to you're there to make able-bodied people feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
And my comedy is not that. I'll be in your face with like, here's what this dumbass did to me, how he treated me. Here's why he's an idiot.
Right.
Here's a part I have my disability that really sucks. Like I'll talk about the negative stuff too. It's not just I'm overcoming. I'll be like, man, wish I could tie my own shoes. Can't do that. I'll joke about that and talk about it. And some people are very, and I'll always say this. I know they're not listening at this point, but I'll be always thankful to America's Got Talent because they gave me the chance, and when I got there, they let me be me. Like I'd always heard that some people like be like, oh well, they're going to try to mold you to do this and this, and if that happens to others, it is what it is. But for me, they took me as unapologetically as possible. I told my stories, I did my thing, and they let me be me. And I proved that somebody wants that version of a handicapped person too. You don't have to be all puppies and rainbows. You can do the dark stuff, and people are going to find appreciation for it because it's real. People with disabilities have a full spectrum of emotions and life experiences. We're depressed. We're sexual beings. You don't get to talk about that in normal society. We're all things too, and people, I think, really latched onto that.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, man. And I didn't take it as inspiration porn.
That's not what I'm doing, man. That's not what. If that's the event that you want, you're not getting that from me. I'll do what I have to do to pay the bills, but I'm never going to be untrue to myself. Like anything I did on AGT, like of course you have to be, the more clean, palatable version of a comedian. But I didn't tell a single joke that made me feel dirty about myself. It was all stuff that like now if I happen to quote unquote inspire along the way, that's awesome. But that's not why I do this. It's just not. People are like, oh, you're so inspirational. Okay, that's a good side effect. I'm trying to make money and I'm an attention whore. We've been over that, I got bills to pay and I like when people pay attention to me. The inspiration stuff is a cool bonus. I'm not going to diminish it, but I'm trying to pay my bills.
Do you ever anybody say, you're so brave?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Man. And I'm like, it's not that brave to tell dick jokes, man. It's not that it's not that crazy, but that comes from a place that's the inspiration porn. There's been this societal just version of people with disabilities that like, man, your life has to be so bad and tough and hard. Man, the fact that you even go out in public looking like that, wow, Jesus. The bravery. I couldn't do that. And for me, I'm just like, man, I just have this thing, I have this thing and it's not quote unquote normal. I have this thing, but really I'm just living my life. It's not that's essentially what inspiration porn is. It's when you call someone with a disability brave, for doing something that wouldn't be brave if you did it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Getting out of bed, taking a shower is not brave if you do it. It shouldn't be brave if I do it either.
Yeah. Take note, folks. Take note. I had one time this guy asked me, he said, I don't see how you do it. And I was like, do what? And he said, walk around being black all day. And I was like, what?
All day. Because you can turn that on and off, right? I don't know a lot about black people, but you can turn it on and off whenever you want, right?
I said, what do you mean? And he was like, and he I don't know what framework his brain was using, but he said I couldn't do it. And then he was honest enough to say, he was like, he said about himself, I'm an a-hole, but if I put on a suit and tie, people are going to expect that I'm a good person, but you're a good person. And even if you were wearing a suit and tie, people might suspect that you're up to something. So there was some kind of level of honesty there. Yeah. And because I told you, I grew up part-time in the trailer too. And I used to hear all kinds of stuff in Mississippi and Virginia. I heard like all sorts of things that a lot of people haven't had privy to hear and had conversation a lot of people haven't had that been able to have. So I've been able to listen through when somebody's trying to make a point, even though it's an awkward path for them to get there. But he basically was acting like I was brave and maybe in some places it is brave. Walk around and be black in some places, but
I feel sometimes, and I think you make a very good point with how I feel. I wish more people would just treat interactions. Mm-hmm. Is that people are clunky, man.
Right.
Like when you told that story, I don't think he was trying to be offensive. I think at the end of the day, and I don't want to speak for him, but I don't want to speak for your experience, but he was like, I acknowledge that you go through some stuff, and I don't know if I'd be strong enough to go through that stuff. I think that's what he's trying to say.
That was what he was trying to say.
But when you come up with like, God, I'm glad I'm not black. Like, it's not quite where you want it to be. You know, it's like it's a little bit like, yeah, I get what you're trying to say, but let's try to work this out a little bit. Yeah, let's not everyone's going to be as forgiving right now as I am.
Yep. No, I know. He was like, if I hadn't, and sometimes I look back and I go, wow, if I hadn't grown up the way that I did, I probably would have been like more offended or angrier faster. But the complexity of my background like kind of like set me up to be able to go, okay, like, what are you saying now? Like, what are you trying to say? You know, and walking through it with people. But a lot of times we don't do that.
We're all very, and I'm guilty of it myself sometimes too. Everyone's very quick to act. And sometimes if you listen to somebody more, you're going to be like, okay, you're just a bad person. Got it. But sometimes, you know, like I'll say that this may be as political as I get on this. I'm a very bleeding heart liberal dude, just with what I believe in a lot of stuff.
Right.
But I also feel that a lot of liberal people, they can't see the forest from the trees.
Right.
You know,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know, like I'll use an example. They'll get mad at using words like, you know, golf handicap, you know, they'll make that a thing to get mad about. When it's like, how about you get mad about nobody will hire me for jobs? Like, that's the actual important thing. I don't care if you say cripple or you don't say the right, like your lingo is a little off. You know, I'm more concerned with how you're actually treating me. You know, I don't want to speak for you. I would imagine, you know, that there's an old Patton Oswalt joke, and I won't use all of the language on it, but essentially he's like, people will get more mad. They won't get mad at the guy who's like, I believe that homosexuality is an abomination. But they'll get mad at the guy who's like, why can't these Fs just get married? I don't see what the big deal. They'll get mad at them because they don't have the lingo down yet, but their heart's in the right place. But you'll ignore the guy who's actually doing the evil stuff. You know? It's like, maybe, you know, I had an old grandma who would say stuff like, I really like that colored fellow. And you'd be like, okay, you can't use that word anymore. But like, she's like, you know, like she's on the right side. She's just from 1901. You know, exactly. It's just like, I feel we need to try to treat people when you can tell what their heart is and what their intention is, and get them to the right place instead of demonizing them for maybe not quite having their head and their words exactly where they need to be just yet.
Yeah, no, I had a lady tell me when I was working at this hardware store in Mississippi, and I was helping out with some stuff, and she said, well, I'll tell you, you're just the nicest little colored boy I ever met. And I was like, Then I started calculating, and I was like, okay, man, I know what this lady's trying to say. I'm not going to be like, you know, whatever. But this was like in the 1990s, you know. But I was like, I see what this lady's trying to say. You know what I mean? I'm not going to like, just what you say? So I just like laughed and like let it go. I actually had something happen last week, and I'm trying to do a set this Thursday if I can negotiate it. But it was funny. This day, I was at this party, and the food that was being served was fried chicken, and it was a mostly white people party. And this guy who was serving it almost dumped the fried chicken on me by mistake. And then another guy saw it and said, and then he goes, he died doing what he loved, drowned in a tray of fried chicken. Like, what? And then I saw his face look like, oh crap, I just said that to a black guy. And I think like I was a guest at the party, and I think I said, I bet that guy would have said it to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It sounds like, especially if he went, oh no. My belief was more of like there's an old the old Dave Chappelle joke where it's like, who doesn't love fried chicken? Fried chicken's delicious. You know, exactly. Like that was probably his brain. Because I'll tell you what, if I die smothered in fried chicken, I had a pretty good ending. That's a good way to go.
Yeah. What a way to go. Yeah, I know. And I like was cracking up laughing. But I knew like some people would be like, okay, that's it. You know, we got to like protest this or whatever. And it's like, I think there's like a time for every human expression. but it's not like always the time sometimes doesn't line up. But one of the questions I like to ask folks is like, when you're looking at this world, it's like crazy, and you're finding things to laugh at. Do you think there's anything that's like off limits when it comes to comedy?
I honestly, I will give an answer with an explanation at the end. So, no, I do not think anything is off limits whatsoever. I don't think there is a single topic that is off limits. However, I do believe there's a couple of things that factor into that. You have to know your audience.
Yeah.
You know, like do I believe, and you have to know your audience, and I also believe that you have to be a skilled enough performer where you have the audience's respect that you can pull it off. Right. I think that is the important thing. I use a general rule that whatever joke I tell, and I'm not going out of my way to tell offensive stuff. That's not who I am as a comic. But if you tell a joke, it needs to be at least 51% funny.
Nice.
If it's more offensive than funny, it's just offensive, and you're not allowed to get mad. But so technically, I do believe if you have the chops to pull it off and it works with what you're doing, and it's a joke that works, I think you can talk about anything. But you better have the stones to do it, and you better have the clout to do it. Like theoretically, and I want your opinion on this, because I don't want to. I'm speaking as a white dude who tells dick jokes. Okay, so I think a white comic should be able to tell a joke where he says the N-word, as long as it's funnier than it is offensive. There has to be a reason why he's saying it. It can't be just for the shock value. It can't be just to get a reaction and prove how edgy they are. If it works for the joke, I don't necessarily believe anything should be off limits. But you better, and then the other rule I give to that too, I'll tell this to comics as well. If you're making a joke about a group of people, you better be willing to tell that joke in front of an audience that's only that people.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a white kid telling an N-word joke, be willing to do it on Urban Night at the club as well. Like if you're willing to do that and the joke goes fine, I think that's not off limits. But if you would hesitate and be like, well, I don't want to tell it then you're racist. Don't tell that joke.
Right.
That's my rule on it.
That's an interesting, I think I like the criteria that you set up for it. Like if you just said, oh, I think white people should be able to tell jokes and say N-word, then I might be like, scratch my head about it. But like the framework that you set around it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't think I should ever get to say, like, I don't have the clout to do that. I don't think there's anything beneficial for it. I think the majority of comedians, especially white comedians, don't have the ability to do it. I'm not saying everyone should go give it a shot and see what happens. I'm just saying in general.
I get it.
It shouldn't. It's not a banned joke. Most of us just aren't good enough to do it. Nor should you try.
And I think the criteria of saying you should be willing to say that in front of that group is also like a powerful criteria for a person to know whether or not they should, like, if they have the chops to do it. Like I grew up in a neighborhood and there was a couple white guys. And when I first moved to the neighborhood, now this is like ironic. And I haven't told this I told this to some friends and they were like, you should say this in stand up, but I actually don't say the N-word in my comedy yet. And I can say it if I want to, but one of the reasons I don't is because a lot of times the audience is white. And I don't want them to repeat the joke to someone else and they like put their hand to the side and go, and he said this. And they feel like they like got some special dispensation. So that's why I don't say it. If I was in a group of all mostly black people, I would, because it, translates better. But there was a couple of white kids when I first moved to my neighborhood, because you see my name's Pedro Silva, right? So like back in the 80s when I was a little kid, people didn't know about like diversity or, people being black but coming from different countries where they have Latino names or any of that other stuff.
Everybody was white, black, or Mexican. That's how
exactly.
That's how it was growing
exactly
up.
What's up.
I grew up in an all-white town in the 80s in a trailer park. Everyone's white, black, or Mexican. That's
exactly, man.
There's no other versions.
Talk to that guy Blake Pickens that I mentioned earlier. He's this Native American. We both joked that it was always black, white. They say black, white, or some kind of Mexican. That's how they would say it. They always some kind of Mexican. So they consider me some kind of Mexican. And when I moved to this other black neighborhood from another black neighborhood, and I said the N-word, and some people got mad at me. And they said, man, you can't say that. And I was like, what? And then they were like, you were some kind of Mexican. And I was like, I'm not some kind of Mexican. but they had banned me from saying it. And I was like, I couldn't believe it, right? But then this white kid came up who was from the neighborhood, and right in front of me was like, yo, what up, Ian? And everybody's like, yo, what up, white Mike? And I was like, what? Where did you get that? And I'm like, so he can say it? And they were like, yeah, he's one of our ears. And I'm like, no, what is this Twilight Zone going on? So I banned the word from my own vocabulary for a while because of that experience.
Because of white Mike, man. He's always doing that.
Yeah, white Mike, man, he's the worst. but he kind of like showed me like he had, because he grew up there. He had like this. He could have probably pulled that joke off in a joke like that in that neighborhood. Yep. But he better not say it in another neighborhood.
Yeah, so, and I think that like really like hits on a certain point too, not just with comedy, but just in general, is that sure there are some blanket rules, quote unquote, but also like your group or tribe or community or whatever it is also has its own subset of rules. You know, like white Mike, the neighborhood came to an agreement that he was cool and this is fine. It's not hateful. Right. If I walked in and was just like, hey, I haven't earned that right in the neighborhood yet. And when you first got in, you hadn't earned that right, whether it was fair or not, or whatever the circumstances. I think neighborhood, like, communities also set their own rules on things. That's why you do see some, there's some white comics who can do really well on an urban circuit, and some white comics that are going to be eaten alive because because those crowds don't accept them. They don't accept that they're like, you haven't earned our trust to do that. And I feel with a lot of jokes, it's a trust issue. I don't think it's a content issue whatsoever. Everything can be joked about, no matter how heinous, but there has to be a trust with the audience that this is, that's why I can do a roast battle and be awful because that trust has been built that this is what that show is. Yeah. But if I do my roast jokes when it's, the Sunday afternoon show in Des Moines, Iowa, it's not going to go the same way. It's just not. So like you have to know what the trust is with your audience at the time, and how you trust them and they trust you as well, how they look at you. I can do awful, quote unquote, awful disability jokes. You can't. You're not on that team the same way, I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to try, though. I think that's the difference a lot of people do. You have the right to try, but I'm not going to save you if you bomb. Exactly. Or the cripple mob comes after you. You're on your own, buddy.
There's a cripple mob. Like, what are you doing in our toilet? No, that's not. But that's like kind of like people like Bill Burr. They have that kind of. They just hold space in a certain way where they're like almost universally funny to black and white audiences because he earned that trust. He like calls stuff out. Plus he's got a black wife.
Yeah. I mean, part of that helps too. Some people are like, well, Bill Burr gets to do it. Yeah. Bill Burr lived in Harlem and as a black white, like he has a little bit more street cred than you. It's just the nature of it, Exactly. I think that's what gets a lot of comics in trouble, especially young comics. Is they don't understand just how hard the journey is to get that respect from audiences. They just see it as a I'm not saying this like literally, even though what we're talking about, but they see it as a black and white issue.
Right.
That they're like, well, Bill Burr gets to say the word, so me on my third show ever, I get to say the word. And it's like, no, you have not earned the respect of the audience to do that.
Yeah.
You don't get to
Bill
say
Burr,
whatever you want.
He's so skillful. Like he won't, I don't never heard him say the word, but he sets it up that you know where he's going, and then your brain just follows the rest of the way, and then he twists it up. So So let me ask you this, like, okay, first of all, I'm gonna ask you the what's so funny about question, which since you're an atheist and I'm a Christian, I'm gonna ask you what's so funny about Christians.
What's so funny about Christians? No self-awareness. I think that's a big part of it. Well, I am not a militant atheist. I always want to repeat that. It's that if you believe in God, hey, and you're not hurting me, we can be buddies. That is not an issue to me whatsoever. But just like no sense of humor and no self-awareness of that. Like the only time I really get, I think Christians are the funniest when they claim to be the most discriminated against group in America. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because I think that is just hysterical to me. Yeah. I don't know why. Or like, I think it's also funny too, the sense of entitlement that comes along with it sometimes as well, where it's like, well, I'm a Christian, so I'm allowed to say this thing to this person. I'm like, bitch, you ain't allowed to say that to me. I was like, your God might allow it, but I'm not. Those are two different things for me.
It's a good thing I quit being a pastor because you would get me fired. But yeah, one time somebody hit me and with their car. And they hit my car. They didn't hit me.
I was going to say, the story's going levels already, man.
Yeah. They hit my car. And then I said, oh, well, let's exchange contact information and insurance information. And the person pointed at the back of their car, and they had one of those Jesus fishes up there. And they pointed at it and said, I'm a Christian. And like just pointed at it like that and I said, okay. And they said, you can trust me. And they just gave me their phone number and said we didn't have to exchange any other information, just call. They were in a rush. Well, needless to say, they never answered the phone.
Right.
And just escaped. So then I was like, well, isn't that something? Because I had that experience. So then the next church I joined, they were selling Jesus fishes. And I just thought about what happened when we were in that past experience. And then I wouldn't buy a Jesus fish. And then everybody in the church started whispering about me, saying I was ashamed of Jesus.
Yeah, it's so strange. Like I said, there's no sense of humor and those absolutes, man. Just like like trust me, I never want to go to church, but like I'm not mad at you, and I don't want to stop you from doing it. That's not how I exist in the world. Yeah, the world is too damn hard. That whatever helps you get through the day, even if it's different than what helps me get through the day, I am a full, please do that. Life is tough. It's very brave for all of us to wake up in the morning and make it to night. That's just the fact of it.
Nice full circle.
But man, when you start saying nonsense like, oh, this country, there's no one that's hated more than Christians. Get the hell, shut up. That's the No, you guys run everything, man. Like you're the default.
And I personally feel like there has to be some self-awareness because I'm a Christian. I'm talking to you and we're joking and stuff like that. So I feel like I agree that there is some level of I'm like, dude, like one of my friends, he was telling me when we were driving in his pickup, and he was like, isn't it weird how these people with all these weird beliefs can't just kind of understand our religion? And I said, yeah, man, like people who believe in believe that the person was born without having sex, the mom was a virgin, and the dude could walk on water. And then he was like, oh yeah, I guess we do sound.
Yeah, what do you think? Because that's the thing. Like I think everyone should be entitled to believe what they want, but like everyone sounds silly to someone else. Like, exactly. and it can be hard to see. Because I'm sure for some people, even if they're well-meaning, for me, what I've done and all the struggles I've went through, I just believe we're here, then we're gone. I just think that's what works for me. And I'm sure there's some people that are like, how can he believe something so stupid and silly? Like we're all too close to ourselves sometimes that it's really difficult to see, okay, why would you think this when I don't think that? And I think that's again, not to get too philosophical here by the end, but like, I think if more people could just like try to at least see the why, even if you don't, not everyone has to come to a final agreement. We're not, there's 8 billion people on the earth. We're not all going to come to the certain, like, yeah, this is the thing. We all took a vote and we agreed. But if you just have the idea, like, okay, this happened to you, this happened to you, and you grew up here, and that's why this. Okay, awesome. Now we're on the same page. But when no one will take the time to like, okay, why'd you become an atheist? Well, this, and this. If you just ask me those questions, we don't have to have a fight about it. But so many people come at you with the fight. Like, you're going to hell. You're evil. You believe in this. Like, oh, you worship the devil. I don't think the devil's real either. But we can have this conversation. We can talk about it and come to an understanding, and everyone can be friends. People just get so like, this is clearly the truth because I believe it. So I have to now fight everyone else. And you don't got to fight. You can agree to disagree. That's a thing that can still happen.
Yeah, and I'm actually with this group, doing some work with this group, and we're having a conversation that's called "Why Don't You Think Like I Do?" And it's just to try to show people that like people have the different past that led them to think what they think or believe what they believe. Like, I went through a phase where I tried to be an atheist, but I'd had so many other things. Like, I had been already indoctrinated, so it was like hard to be one. I'd be like, I don't believe in God. Jesus, please help me stop believing. I was like, I don't know. But so it's like just this kind of crazy way of like realizing that we're, like you said before, it's we're all brave, jokingly, to be here and to get up every day and try to do what we have to do. And it's like, what makes you get through the day, help you to be the best you can to other people, take care of your family, those sorts of things, and not do harm to other folks.
Yeah. That's my big thing. Just don't do harm to other folks. I don't care if someone's a Christian. I care if you try to pass laws that only benefit Christians.
Right.
That's where I get upset. But I don't care that you spend your Sundays how you want. Go do whatever you like. Man, it makes you happy. I'm happy for you. That, like, sincerely, that's how I look at it. But once you start like trying to, to codify your stuff, so I got to believe it too, then we're gonna have a problem. That's the only thing. I don't want atheist laws. I think that's ridiculous. I don't want to ban religion from everything ever. Like, that's also stupid. Like, because like, I don't want it, but you do. So we can both be happy. We can both make
it's like you go to a restaurant and you're like, I'm eating a burger, so everybody in this place needs to eat burgers.
Yeah, we're banning chicken because only I like burgers, and that's all we're having. Like, no, just let me eat the damn chicken. Doesn't matter.
So my experience of you is like, you're sharp, you're quick, you're just coming with it. And I really appreciate having the time to talk to you. I wanted to ask you real quick, what is the worst response you ever received from any funny joke or story that you told?
Oh, man. It's usually, I can't pinpoint like a single thing, but I would say it's somewhere, and this doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to, but it would be, and it's almost always Midwestern Christian white women who do this. It's the your stereotypical Karen, that stereotype, that archetype of human. But like, I would do a show and I would tell jokes about being disabled, and I might say, well, I'm crippled in this or whatever. But clearly, look, I'm telling the story. It's fine. Right. And they would always come to me like, I found that very offensive because I have a grandson who has a disability, and I do not think this is very funny. And I'm like, let's talk to your grandson, see what he thinks about it. Like, I don't care. Like, that's always the response. It's like, you can't talk about this because I know someone like that.
I've had people tell me that about black people while I'm black.
You can't make jokes about black people. Black, like that. Yep. It's the same kind of like philosophy of it. So that's probably the worst response. I am never mad if somebody thinks I'm not funny. Right. Comedy is so subjective that if you just don't think I'm funny, that is one thing that's fine. We can agree to disagree and move on with our days. But when you're like, you can't talk about your disability, the hell I can't. like that's an everything. You don't get to tell me what to do. The comedy and audience relationship is I tell joke, you laugh or you don't. That is the end of the conversation.
That's the end of it.
We're done after that. You don't have to laugh if you don't want to. You don't have to stifle your laughter if you think it's funny. But you don't get to, this isn't a choose your own adventure. You don't get to pick the jokes I tell. I tell the jokes, you like them or you don't. We're done here.
What's the best response you ever had? You ever had a memorable response that you were like, wow, that hit the nail on the head?
It did not get aired on television, but I got to hear Simon Cowell call someone an asshole on my behalf.
Oh,
which was great. So sorry, I'm gonna be using the language here. You'll have to beep this out.
That's all right.
But so my AGT set. So the audition round they tape, and then they kind of edit it a little bit afterwards. So I had told a story, and it's a true story about Simon kind of asked me, why. Why do you think you haven't made it yet to this point? And I'm like, well, it's really difficult to break through when you have a disability. I've done shows before. I've showcased for work, got a standing ovation. And then the club booker has told me, well, we're not looking for these type of acts here. And I'm like, well, the audience loved me. Like it seemed like, so I've had a lot of doors slammed in my face that way. And then after I did my set and did really well, he was like, that guy was an asshole. Hearing Simon Cowell say that was amazing to me. So that's probably the best response of just getting that vindication. And Simon Cowell's just one dude, but he's the gatekeeper to all the opportunities I've gotten since then. And to basically what I had been saying for years before that, I was like, if you just give me a chance, I'm going to crush this. People you're either funny or you're not. It doesn't matter what your gimmick is or what people think of it. People are not going to fake laughter. No one laughs at me because they feel sorry for me. That's not how comedy works. You can't fake a ha-ha response. Everyone knows it's fake. So it's I just needed the opportunity for someone and for him to kind of that was the vindication I needed to it was basically, if I had middle fingers, I would be waving them at all the people who had done that to me in the past, because I was like, see, Simon Cowell gets it and he knows nothing about comedy.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. So if people want to reach out to you, catch a show, whatever, what's the best way of contacting you?
So a couple ways. Website is cripplethreat.com. That's why I have my dates on there. You can buy tickets and all that kind of stuff. I don't know exactly when you put this up, but just in case anyone's wondering, the first half of this year is a little lighter for me, and that is by design. We mentioned it very briefly earlier. I have an 8-month-old son now. And right now, my wife, because that's how we get our health insurance, she's back at her job. She's a teacher. And so I'm kind of stay-at-home dadding during the day. And I love it. And it's awesome. And my boy's great. So if you're seeing well, why isn't he working that much? It's because I'm being very selective until we get to the summer, and we'll have better childcare then. So cripplethreat.com, and then all my social media. It's me that runs it. If you want to just give a nice message, whatever, I'm happy to talk to you. It's at Cripple Threat 8 on everything.
Nice.
That's the number 8 because there was 7 before me, but I've risen to power. I am their leader.
There were 7 Cripple Threats.
A small, quick story that I thought was very funny. So originally I wanted just Cripple Threat, but it was taken, so I chose Cripple Threat 8 because just 8's my favorite number. That's the actual reason. When my audition aired for AGT, and when that first airing happens, your social media blows up. You get all these messages, you get all this stuff. The guy who owns or who was Cripple Threat on Instagram, he sent me a message. He was like, man, I don't care about AGT at all, but it sounds like you did pretty good. So I'm going to send people your way, I guess. And then we kind of became buddies. He was like a nice guy. He's like, I don't care about that show at all, but good job. And so I've become buddies with Cripple Threat as well.
The original Cripple Threat.
The OG, yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, this has been awesome, hilarious, and I was looking forward to connecting with you, and I appreciate it. You're very brave.
Thank you. I put on these headphones all by myself. It's crazy.
Awesome, man. That's
crazy,
awesome.
man. Everyone should be inspired, tackle the day.
I got a little tear in my eye right now.
As you should.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, and I'm going to keep an eye out. And you live in Indiana?
I'm actually in Southern California now, so I'm out of Indiana originally, but my wife is from here. So when we got married,
okay,
I can tell my jokes from anywhere, so it made more sense for me to move than her to move.
Nice. Well, if I can somehow magically find myself in SoCal, I will come hit up one of your shows.
Well, where are you at?
I'm in Colorado.
Like I said, I tour a lot, so hopefully I'll swing through. Colorado is actually a state I'm desperately. It's one of the weird ones I've never performed in my entire career, and I'm trying really hard. So we'll make it happen.
Yeah, if you get out here, man, I won't say this to everybody on the podcast, but I'm gonna say it to you. You got a place to stay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Take care.
Appreciate you. Bye.
Bye. And now some special bonus content from What's So Funny About. So I was saying that this podcast episode is going to launch on February 1st, which is the first day of Black History Month.
Which is now putting me in a real awkward position there, because now there's going to be clips of me that people are going to take out of context where I'm like, I think you should be able to say the N-word no matter what. You can do it. Thank you. I was telling stories about you can't be canceled. I just got canceled. Thank you very much for having me on
a special episode of What's So Funny About. Like, should be able to say that.
Yeah,
for Black History Month.
This feels like a sting operation. Like you were just like, cripples have had it too good for too long. It's about time we take one down a peg.
Yep, all these parking spots and
where's my Black History Month parking spot, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I should be able to park right in the front. No, I was about to say something real stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, in February you can park in my spot. That's the that's the reparations I'm going to give you to mend this fence.
Yeah,
hopefully
man.
I'm not ruined here.
We need to create a coalition for Black History Month, like in honor. Like you can get what did you call it, the cripple mob? And it's like,
the cripple mob working with the what would the try to think of the way that's not going to actually get canceled.
Yeah, just say I don't know. Don't say anything. We'll keep them getting canceled.
I've already said too damn much.
Yeah. So I need to say for Black History Month, you can have our parking spots.
There you go. That's I believe we're even now. Thank you.
Yeah, everything it's all squashed. No. Well, I might get canceled too, so we can be canceled together. We can
exactly do as buddies.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the bonus features.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Congratulations on what's your kid's name?
Owen.
Congratulations on Owen Niemiller.
Yep. He's a good boy. He's got a big old head, just like his dad. So
nice. Yeah, my kid's got the noggins from me too. So
man,
nice.
My awesome. Poor wife. She's the real brave one. I'll tell you that much.
Awesome, man. That's great. Thanks, bro.
Take care and happy Black History Month.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great way to end it.
It is. I feel good about that.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. The What's So Funny About podcast was brought to you by the Liberation Comedy Project, which is being incubated by Mediators Foundation, mediatorsfoundation.org, and managed by Unify, younify.org. Stay tuned for future episodes and check out past episodes as we work to bring more light, laughter, and love to this world through the Liberation Comedy Project. Bye for now.